all of these are filtered through humanity and the fact that we are imperfect human beings and we always make mistakes and always fail. But we try, our goal is to always do what we say we will do, which means we have to edit our own words. So we are a constant work in progress. Sometimes we make other sorts of mistakes or lose our tempers and yell at our kids. I think it's really important to be humble as parents and not be afraid to apologize, to explain a mess up, to reverse course on a parenting decision. And that can be really, really difficult. Hey, welcome back to the Healthy Parenting Handbook. I'm Katie Kimball from Kids Cook Real Food, your host, and I strive to bring together experts in the fields of health, nutrition, parenting, and more to help you, intentional parents who really want to raise healthy, independent adults, to get the information you need. I know we've said it, whether we have newborns, toddlers, elementary age kids, or teenagers, there doesn't feel like there is a handbook for this. Sometimes it just feels like we are off without an anchor trying to figure this parenting gig out on our own. I don't think we have to be quite so solo. Today, I get to be my own guest. I'm going to answer a question that someone in my real life asked me, and I was just tumbling this question around and around in my mind for days and adding to my answer. And I finally thought, I should write about this. I should talk about this. Like maybe this would be a halfway decent podcast title, because if this new acquaintance had this question of me, maybe other people have this deep desire in their hearts or this question as well. So let's dive right in. First, a little context. This question, Katie, how did you raise such nice boys? Or how do I raise such nice boys? This came up in a cast party after our production of Mary Poppins. And so this is actually very important for you to understand the context in which this was being asked and what this kind of new acquaintance knew about my life. So I got to play one of the leads in Mary Poppins. No, I was not Mary. I was actually the evil nanny, Miss Andrew, who is not in the movie version. So if you've only seen that, you won't know who she is. But I basically terrorized the children. I was Mary Poppins' adversary. And my goodness, was it a fun role. It was a massive challenge for me, as an aside, because I don't really sing in front of people. I don't really do solos. Yes, I talk in front of people a lot. That was no problem. But man, learning to sing and hit all the notes, and it was a really difficult song. Boy, did it stretch me. So aside, little tip, as adults and as parents, it's probably really good for us. Like it has to be really good for our brains and even just our parenting and our general kind of self-care to try something new, try stand-up comedy, take singing lessons, put yourself out there, take a leadership position on a board. I just would encourage you to do something new in the next year or two, partly for your own brain and for your own sense of self and to stretch your comfort zone, but also what good modeling for our kids. And I say that not as someone who enjoyed it necessarily. I mean, I did, but gosh, it was hard. and my kids had to see me struggle. And they don't often see me struggle in my adult life. I at least try to act like I have it all together. So I think that was good for them. The really cool thing about this community production of Mary Poppins is that I got to be in it with 3 of my 4 kids. Happened to be all of my boys are my theater kids. And so all 3 of them were in it. And in fact, my 19-year-old and my 13-year-old had lead roles bigger than mine. So we were at the theater a lot. And people really got to know my boys, because we were just there together all the time. And so Paul is 19, John is 13, little Gabe, he was 9 at the time, he's 10 now. We were all in this production together, along with, by the way, 19 other family units. We had so many families where multiple people in the family were on stage or in cast and crew. So much fun. It's just, community theater is lovely. If you want to stretch yourself, find community theater. Even if you're on the crew, that was an incredible experience for some adults who had never done theater before. The point is, we all spent a lot of time together, and I am very proud of my boys. I think they're amazing human beings. And, especially when they're not complaining to me about their homework and their chores and they're overtired and stuff. Our kids always have like a little better face out and about in front of the world than sometimes they do at home, which is okay. I want to be their safe space where they can let loose and break down if they need to. But what other people in the cast, of course, saw were just very mature, sensible, kind, thoughtful boys. This mom happens to have one boy. He's 15 or 16. And so when she kind of grabbed me, we were just chatting about all sorts of stuff, of course, in little groups at this cast party where it was just the adults. And when she looked at me and said, Katie, just like Paul and John, like they're so amazing. How do you raise such nice boys? I really want to know. And my first thought in my head that I quickly censored from my lips was, oh, your kid, it's too late. Your kid's a teenager. I was so taken aback. I didn't really know what to say. So I don't know what I said to her, to be honest. I don't even remember. I only remember like voraciously censoring, making sure I didn't say, oh my gosh, it's too late for you. We'll address that at the end of the episode. Is it ever too late? But as I tumbled this question over and over in my mind over the next days and weeks, really, and it's been a few months now, and I just keep coming to this list on my computer and thinking, what else can I add? What have we done? Because yes, I've been a very intentional parent. Yes, we've set up a very intentional family culture, but holy cow, have we made a lot of mistakes along the way as well. And so I tried to figure out, what makes me so proud? Like, why do people appreciate working with my boys? Because this is not the only person that I've heard this from. Like, my kids are so awesome. And I'm just so tickled. But from the inside, I can see all of our faults and all of our insecurities and our inconsistencies and just the mistakes that we've made. But when I look at it, I think, raising nice boys, which applies to nice kids. But I think people sometimes see boys as maybe they're a little more active, or maybe they're a little less thoughtful of other people's feelings, right? Of course, that's not true for all kids and all genders, but people tend to see boys as a little different than girls. Of course, genders are different. Boys are different than girls. We just don't want to stereotype them. But I think it's worth exploring, like, how do we raise nice boys in particular? 90% of what I'm going to say, though, I think applies to raising independent, excellent, phenomenal girls as well. For us, I really believe it started almost from the womb, from just the care that I took trying to take care of my body and have a healthy pregnancy. And the moment I thought, oh, it's from the womb, I thought, actually, it's before that. Raising nice kids starts with choosing a great spouse. To me, it starts with marrying a nice man. I think my boys are a little more calm and maybe a little more kind because I chose a man who has a little bit more of a calm spirit. Now, he gets worked up about sports. And I remember one particular time when Paul, the oldest, was about 1 maybe. And my husband, Chris, was watching some sports event and something happened he didn't like on the TV. He smashed his fist on the ground and yelled really loud at the TV. And toddler Paul immediately started crying. It was hilarious. And so again, it's not to say that I didn't raise a masculine man, but in general, he's tender, he's gentle, he's calm. We don't have an incredibly raucous household. So for what it's worth, I think starting with marrying a nice man, like if you look at the man and you think I would love to raise 4 little of these person, then that's a good start, right? So it starts with marrying a nice man. When my kids were little, I engaged in baby carrying. I kept them close to me physically. I really believed in attachment parenting, however that was defined at the time. I think the phrase attachment parenting, it shifts and it adapts, and sometimes the definitions are a little different. But I wanted my kids to know that I was their mama, that I was their safe place, that they could feel safe with me. So we picked him up when we cried. We did a little bit of crying out, but it didn't work anyway. I very much practice attachment parenting. And I think one of the beautiful pieces of baby wearing and carrying your babies often is that they become very attuned to your person. And they also get to see other adults' eyes and lips, and they get to, in some ways, engage in adult conversation. They get to see everything that I'm doing with my hands. And I think that helps them build their neural pathways. I think it helps them build their brain and their social cues a little bit, even though obviously they're way too young to understand, but they're just in the absorbent mode, the absorbent developmental phase. So we know scientifically that humans, most mammals, have something called mirror neurons. And I just learned how mirror neurons were discovered. This is so cool. It was researchers studying something with primates. I don't know if it was apes or chimpanzees. He had some kind of readings on the monkey's brain, the chimp, I think, on the chimp's brain. And he was reading what this chimp did. And then he actually, the man like picked something up out of a crate or something, and the monkey didn't do it, but the brain signaled that he was doing that action, like that he was like almost in his brain, he was picking it up like a mental image or a dream, but he didn't actually pick it up. And that was the first way we figured out that we have neurons in our brain that sort of mirror what we are seeing. We know now that mirror neurons fire more strongly the closer the relationship you have with the person. So the deeper love you have with the person that you're looking at and that you're mirroring, the more strongly those fire, which means both good and bad. It means that our kids are constantly reflecting us like a mirror, whether we think they're watching or not. So if we come to the table with, let's say, a very stressed out tone of voice and a stressed out face, whether that's about dinner or whether it's about world events or whether it's about our work or our relationship with our spouse, our kids actually feel that stress. They mirror it, and their body takes on our body's stress. So that's kind of the like scary sense of mirror neurons. The good sense is that they also model what we do. So if we can get it right, if we can get our own lives right, and we have composure in the face of tricky situations, if we show good character and we show how we love others and we allow our kids to model, to mirror that, then they are in a way learning how to be mature from us. Again, like I said, it's good and bad. It's scary and it's inspiring, but it means that anything I do, I'm building in my kids, not genetically, but neurologically through our physical interactions with each other. Whew. So, because I think I chose an amazing husband and I'm continually working on myself, and I've raised kids who are pretty cool. Now, I've got a lot of failures, and I am seeing some of those failures and character flaws reflected in my kids as well. So we are a constant work in progress. But that's where it starts. It starts really, really young and really attuning our bodies and our brains, especially, I think, to our boys, because we want them to feel like they can be leaders. We want them to feel strong and independent, but I also want them to feel tender and gentle at the same time, personally. I thought about a lot, right? Some of my first thoughts when I was noodling on this question in the first few days after this acquaintance asked, they ended up in sort of a category that I would call our household or family culture, that we have built a very strong culture where we have specific values, we have specific routines, and we even say it out loud sometimes. We are a family who does this, or Kimball's do this. So we go to church. We go to church very regularly, I would say religiously, and that gives our kids structure. They know that church is not optional. They know that it's something that we put our faith into, we put our time into, and they see that commitment. And I do believe that that helps raise kids who know how to be committed. We have a practice of family prayer before every meal and before we go to bed every single night, whoever's home. Of course, the older my kids get, the less and less often we get to have all six of us in the room at once. But it is lovely when it happens. And then I treasure it. We still get a couple times a week, our family night prayer. And, at family prayer, we give gratitude for things that happened in our day. We pray for things that are tough. We pray for other people, family, and friends who are in tough situations. And most of the time, we get completely derailed. We end up giggling or we talk about something really intense. In fact, it usually happens on my turn, but I swear it's not my fault. But we do have a family joke that someday, if I'm ever a saint, I'll be Saint Catherine of Byron Center, derailer of prayers. I can't even stop laughter from coming because it's like every night. But what does that mean? That means, first of all, that we're looking to a being higher than ourselves. Whether you believe in the Christian God or Muslim God or the Hindu God, whether you believe in the universe, looking towards something higher than yourself as a family knits you together. Spending time together, allowing yourself to laugh, talking about the good things and being grateful, and digging up some of the tough things. Man, that's how relationships build. So I really believe that whether that's prayer or some other sort of like intention or routine, that time we spend as a family is invaluable to building my kids' character and who they are and who they show to the world. We also have a culture of healthy food. that might not be a surprise to you if you've been around very long. But we very much have a culture of healthy food. And I do think that hopefully that gives my kids proper fuel for the day. I hope that that potentially improves like that calm sensibility, especially in the boys, that hopefully my boys are less maybe sugared up than your average kid here in America, so that they're able to have a little more self-control because their bodies have that stable blood sugar. Are we always perfect? No. Do we eat too much sweets sometimes? Yes. Do we have convenience meals sometimes? Absolutely. But overall, I'm hoping that I'm flooding my kids' bodies on a general day-to-day basis with lots of vitamins, minerals, nutrients, healthy fats, less sugar, hopefully, and just giving them the best foundation nutritionally and physically that they can have to again be their best selves and like supercharge everything else we're trying to do. It also, the way we eat healthy food, I think gives them a sense of self-discipline. And self-discipline is a huge character trait. It's a massive addition or a massive foundation for a lot of other things that we can do well, right? Self-discipline is going to help my kids in academics. It will help them in their extracurriculars. It will help them be, good people socially with their friends or future spouses. Self-discipline helps them to use moderation when they're eating. It helps them to use moderation when they're speaking. Just, I don't know, self-discipline and moderation, I think, are really wonderful character traits to teach. And so we do that partly through food, partly through our religious traditions, and probably some other things as well. Did you know my oldest son, Paul, and 4 of his friends wrote a cookbook for kids a couple years ago? It is the first and so far the only real food cookbook written by kids for kids. And I have to give Chef Junior a huge shout out as today's podcast sponsor. This book is packed with 100 recipes that kids can make, and they're leveled from beginner to advanced. So your littlest kids and your teens can find so many delicious foods to love. Again, this is written by 5 kids. They put together this cookbook when they themselves were between the ages of 9 and 12, and it launched in 2020 when they were between the ages of 12 and 15. It is so inspiring for other kids to see what children do in the kitchen and what they have put together, and to read words written by actual peers of their own. You can learn more about the book Chef Junior and how our kids put it together, and also get some special bonus gifts just from our kid authors. Go to kidscookrealfood.com/chefjr. That's kidscookrealfood.com/chefjr for all the fun bonuses, background scoop, and ordering information. Speaking of moderation, we have a very strong family culture rule or routine of people over screens. We tell our kids all the time, like, you got a friend you can play with? Please choose people over screens. Okay. And this is a constant back and forth. It's constantly shifting and changing as the world and society and culture changes, as the device opportunities change, and as each child gets older and gets interested in different parts of the device world. We always talk about people over screens. We have some pretty serious screen time when they're little, and media content at all ages limits. We really talk a lot with our kids about using screens for good, and making sure that we are managing our screens and their screens are not controlling us. So, for example, I know my daughter, and now again, this is about boys, but and I said 90% would apply to both genders. My daughter on her own has decided to set some limits on her phone, where her phone will cut her off when she hits a certain number of minutes on certain apps. We have restricted social media pretty much entirely. She is 16. She has one social media. It's Snapchat, just to communicate with people she already knows. And I'm still not sure if we're making the right choice on that. But traditional social media where you can talk to other people out in the world, not happening. My 13-year-old John doesn't have a phone yet. He is in the vast minority of 8th graders. And in fact, I would gander the vast minority of middle schoolers, 6th through 8th grade. And he's at, the top of the age level. The little guy, Gabe, to age 10, does he have his own tablet? He does, but he has very strict, like, no screen times on weekdays, time limits on weekends. So we're pretty strict about that. I think it's paying off. I hope it's paying off. We've got one halfway launched. He started his own business, Paul did, and lives here at home, but he's an adult. He's 19 and a half, and he is very much not addicted to his phone. And that makes me really, really happy. Does he watch a lot of YouTube? And, everybody's got their screen things, but he is not addicted to his phone. And I look at Leah, my daughter, who's 16, and I think she's not either. And so we kind of pat ourselves on the back on that one. Like, okay, maybe we're getting through this. Maybe we're doing it at least like an A-B+ level. I don't know how to rank that, but I'm pleased that our kids aren't addicted to their phones. And I think that helps them interact socially at a much higher level, right? They know how to make eye contact. They know how to communicate in person, face to face. Do they still spend a lot of time on their screens? Absolutely. Do I worry about that? For sure. I have no idea if what we're doing is exactly correct, but that's why our parenting is adaptive. We might change some of our dessert rules or some of our screen time rules, including the really hard choice of pulling back. So we have done some pulling back where we gave a child, let out the apron string and gave them some independence with a screen or access to a certain app. It didn't go super well, or we learned new information and we pulled back. Whew, that is really hard, really, really hard, but it may be worth it. Similarly, kind of related to the screen issue, right? We talked about healthy food and that self-discipline, having self-discipline on our screens. When you're not on screens, you got to have something else to do. So it's my hope that we prioritize, or that it feels like in our family culture that we prioritize a lot of outdoor time. We love going camping. We wish we had more time for that in the summer. We take big hiking trips to mountains, and just in general, even in bad weather, we do try hard to prioritize that family time. So outdoors, yes. Family togetherness, yes. That's tough. Schedules get busy. We try to not overschedule, but with 4 kids, it can fill up really quickly. So we really try to prioritize family dinners. Again, the older our kids get, the more they might have evening events, and family dinners become 4 out of the 6, or maybe 5 out of the 6, or maybe it's 3 and 3 eating dinner at 2 different times. But at least once or twice a week, hopefully 3 or 4 times, we're getting a pretty solid family dinner. And again, that's that family bonding time where you're telling your stories and you're joking around. And my daughter she's a bit melancholic as far as a personality, not in a bad way. It's just she's very stoic. And so she says, I'm not really a laugh out loud kind of girl. But my husband asked her the other day, well, who does make you laugh, or what makes you laugh? What can get an actual giggle out of you? She's like, well, you do when you make jokes and act silly. Like, that's awesome. Like, that's what we do at our family dinners. Sometimes we just melt into laughter. It's not like every family dinner is beautiful. It's not like every family dinner is hilarious. It's not like every family dinner even is calm. And sometimes they're very stressful, but we do it. And the more we do it, the more chance we have to have family bonding at those dinners. Beyond building a culture, so I kind of talked about family culture and what it feels like and looks like to be a Kimball. We've also made some very specific parenting choices. And some of these are what I tell my parents when I talk about parents I work with here in the community, when I talk about picky eating or on other healthy parenting handbook episodes. But here are a couple of our intentional parenting choices. First, we try really hard. And again, note, all of these are filtered through humanity and the fact that we are imperfect human beings and we always make mistakes and always fail. But we try, our goal is to always do what we say we will do, which means we have to edit our own words. And when we're about to say, if you do this, this will happen, or honey, blah, 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 blah is coming next. Whatever we're going to say, we try really hard to edit it before it comes out with the question, am I willing to follow through on this? And is it possible to follow through on this? Right? Because I really, really want my kids to know I will do what I say I do. And sometimes I even say that. They'll be like, that's not fair. Well, honey, I'm sorry. I told you yesterday this, and I do what I say I will do. So that's a phrase that comes out of our mouth. Because we are imperfect humans, sometimes even on that one, we can't do what we say we will do, or we change our mind and realize we made a bad decision when we opened our mouths. Sometimes we make other sorts of mistakes or lose our tempers and yell at our kids. I think it's really important to be humble as parents and not be afraid to apologize, to explain a mess up, to reverse course on a parenting decision. And that can be really, really difficult. And gosh, being humble doesn't usually feel very good, but I know it's really important. So I push myself to do that in front of my kids. We have high expectations for our kids. We try to balance that with not being perfectionists. We are raising a couple perfectionists. I've got one of them who will say, "Oh, I did bad on my math test. Oh, what'd you get? Oh, 96." I'm like, well, honey, we try not to be perfectionists, but yet we do want to have high expectations that our kids' performance will match the gifts they've been given. That their hard work is at 100%. And that the output matches a hard work level of 100% and then, adjusted for whatever their talent or ability may be. Now, those high expectations are married with the fact that we also really work as a team to try to reach goals. So I don't want all the goals for my kids or the high expectations to always be top down and to be like a boss employee relationship. So for example, way back when Paul was in middle school, his pediatrician said, you might be getting a little like scoliosis. I don't know. He's got hypermobile joints. He's just a really flexible dude. And so his back was starting to get a little bit of a twist. And so we said, gosh, like good posture is really important for you, both for your physical health and because it makes you look better. It makes you look taller. And he's told me recently, because now I'm having the same conversation with the middle school brother, John, about posture. And let's watch our posture while we're on the tablet and let's watch our posture at the table. Paul, 19, has very good posture. And he looks so tall. His stature is just impressive. Someone at church the other day told me he reminded this guy of a soldier walking when he was just walking up to serve at church. And I thought, yeah, he has really good posture. And Paul said, you told me it was important. And so I always heard your voice in my head and I just decided it was. And I'm like, that's amazing. It doesn't always work that way. With John, I had a conversation with him. I said, listen, I hate always correcting you. I feel like I'm nagging and I don't want to do that unless it's important to you too. I said, do you want to have good posture? Do you want to look taller and have less back pain, neck pain later as an adult? He said, yeah. He said, I said, you give me permission to correct you? And he said, yes. And so I felt like we're on a team there. Like there's still hierarchical, right? I think it's really important to have mutual respect while setting expectations and working toward goals, but there's still a defined hierarchy, right? Mom and dad can still say it's time to sit down and do your homework. This is not negotiable, right? Mom and dad are still the bosses and you're still underneath them, but that mutual respect and saying, hey, is this a goal that's also important to you? And if it's not, maybe here's why it should be. And let's get you on board so that we can work together toward the goal. We did the same thing with my littlest guy learning multiplication tables. He didn't like practicing. He didn't like doing his rocket math and, doing multiplication table after multiplication table. But we just kept telling him, buddy, like, this is so important. We would show him like, wow, look at John's math, look at Leah's high school math, because you're going to have to know this to do your work. And eventually he got really good at his multiplication tables and it was so exciting. And we could say, look, like hard work really pays off. And so I think some of that, like feeling like it's a teamwork effort really helps, but do remember that defined hierarchy. I tell my picky eating community parents all the time that our kids need choice within boundaries. We don't want to give them all the choices in the world. That's letting them have way too much power and control and giving them more responsibility than their little undeveloped brains can handle. But they do need some agency. They need some choice. They need to practice making choices so that they can learn to make choices independently when they grow up and become teenagers and then adults. So they do need some choices, but within boundaries. I do think giving our kids agency is really important. I feel like I've rambled on a lot. I hope this feels important to you. I hope it feels helpful for most of you. I mean, I'm hoping you're going, yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. Great. Give yourself a pat on the back, parents, if you're building this intentional family culture and making these intentional, very difficult parenting choices. Well done. If you heard me say a few things and you think, oh, I could probably do better on that. By the way, I'm thinking I could probably do better on some of these too, right? Just because it's an intentional choice we've made doesn't mean I'm always successful about it. But I'm hoping that I'm giving you a couple goals and some ideas and again, some philosophies to sort of turn over in your head and talk about with your spouse or anyone else who is part of raising your kids with you. Now we got to come back to the question that I asked at the beginning that happened in my head that I censored from my lips. Is it ever too late? Is it ever too late to get started raising nice kids, especially nice boys? I mean, I think hopefully not. I don't really know this one from experience. I mean, we're always trying to kind of sand the rough edges of our boys without crushing their spirits and without changing their God-given personalities. I hope it's never too late. I love Dr. Gordon Neufeld's optimism in his book, Hold On to Your Kids. And he talks about, if your attachment has been broken, your attachment to your kids in the tween or teen years, it's really common, it can be repaired. We can always reattach to our kids. Now, the stories he tells, it might take a really big focus and it might take a major change to lifestyle, like changing a school or moving communities or breaking some friendships. Hopefully not. Hopefully not. That's like in a serious situation, right? For a lot of parents, if your attachment or your relationship to your kids is just becoming a little bit broken, not completely broken, but a little bit marred or harmed or fractured, a big interruption to life might be the reset that it needs. Dr. Gordon Neufeld talks about taking one of his teens on a camping trip, a hiking trip, just the two of them. And it took a couple days for some of the barriers to break down, but they completely reattached and were able to re-enter normal life and normal society with their parent-child attachment back in place. And that really helped his daughter reduce her anxiety and improve her social peer relationships. So just keep that in mind if you're thinking, like I'm losing my kid, I'm losing my middle schooler, I'm losing my high schooler, I don't feel like I even know them anymore. Go big. Do something big that's really interruptive to their normal life. Take a screen-free week or something. Is that hard to do? Is it maybe expensive? Is it interrupting your life? And can you afford to take that time off work? I don't know. But if you get to a certain point and your relationship is fractured enough, you can't afford not to. For teens, especially if screens are becoming a problem, I talked about how we have pulled back on some of the independence or apps that we've given to our teens. You might have to do that too. They might hate you for a minute, but honestly, sometimes our job is to be hated for a minute to save them for a lifetime. So just think about that if you're thinking, oh goodness, is it too late for me? I don't think so. I don't think it's ever too late, but it might take a really big intervention. In summary, I've talked about a lot. I've worked us from the womb to newborns and toddlers, a lot of decisions we made along the way. I've talked about our household culture as a family and really strategic, intentional, but also dynamic, variable parenting choices that we're always assessing and changing. But when we make parenting choices, we keep our true north. We keep really strong values. My husband and I make a united front. We always try really hard to be on the same page as we make those parenting decisions. The decisions we make in practice might look a little different for different kids of ours because they all have different personalities and deserve to have adaptive parenting. They might look different for eras of society or culture and phases of our lives, but they're always rooted in the same values that we decided, when we got married. And that if those have shifted at all, we shift together, we move together. The bottom line in how to raise nice boys and in general, nice kids, independent kids who others enjoy being around, is that we let them be themselves. We try not to crush their own spirit out of them. We try to let them have their own personalities. We try really hard to make sure that they know they are loved no matter what, but also that they are a work in progress, that I'm still a work in progress at 44. And if I'm still working on improving myself and raising my bar and continuing to have expectations for myself, then I hope my kids understand that they can always improve on the imperfect beings that we all are. So did I end up raising nice boys? They're 10, 13, and 19. I hope so. Some of them have a lot more growth to go. But my husband and I have worked really, really hard to set that intentional family culture and make some very intentional, sometimes very difficult parenting decisions and expectations and philosophies. Let me know in the comments what you think about this. Let me know if you have a story of any intentional or difficult parenting decision you've ever had to make. And if you know my kids, I hope that you too think that they are nice boys and nice kids. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Healthy Parenting Handbook podcast. I hope your brain feels fed and your heart feels full and that you feel connected, knowing that there are other parents on this journey with you. We're just trying to raise healthy, independent adults. And the next time you think, man, there is no handbook for this job. Now there is the Healthy Parenting Handbook. Look up the podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. Please leave a review, my friends, as that helps other parents who need this information to find us. And of course, subscribe. That's a huge help. You can also look for our shorts as a reel on Instagram at Katie Kimball Kids Cook, or subscribe to the Healthy Parenting Handbook Shorts channel on YouTube. you'll get those bite-sized portions of healthy parenting advice.